Hi, everybody. Thanks ever so much for bearing with us. We're so excited to be here. We've had hundreds of people register for this event. Over 500 people have registered, and we have 200 people plus watching us live right now. My name is Joe Dale. I'm an independent languages consultant, former teacher, and now doing lots and lots of webinars like this. Is officially a Joe Dale webinar, and it's my absolute pleasure this evening to be joined by Steve Eden, who will be talking to us in a moment about how we can use football to motivate young people and encourage them to carry on with languages at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 if you're in England and wherever you are further afield. We've had people literally from all over the world registering for this event. So if you're watching the replay, thank you ever so much for finding the time. If you're here with us live right now, we're incredibly excited for you to be here. So today is the 6th of February 2023. If you would like to leave comments in the chat, that would be absolutely fantastic. We're going to run for about an hour or so. We're going to do all the questions at the end, but what I will do is I will collect the questions that you put in the chat. It's helpful if you put the letter Q in front of your question, because with so many people in the chat as we speak, it means that I'll be able to identify them quickly and easily. If you want to leave a comment in the chat, you do have to sign in with a Google account. I know it says that you have to have a channel. All that means is you just need to have a Gmail address and you will be able to sign in. If you want to just watch, that's fine as well. But if you want to leave a comment, no problem at all, but you'll need to sign in with a Google account. And without further ado, I'm just going to mention a couple of things, if that's okay, before we start. So if I just quickly bring up the presentation, the first thing I wanted to mention is last couple of days, the PPLI, the Post-Primary Languages Ireland organization, published their first 2 episodes of the MFL Teachers Talk podcast. This is completely free to access. You can just go to the link that you can see on the screen, ppli.ie, etc., or you can just do a search on Spotify for MFL Teachers Talk. It will be on Apple very soon. We're just getting that sorted out at the moment, but we've got 2 episodes. The first one is about 30 minutes and the second one is about 20 minutes, and we've got another one coming out in a month's time. So please listen to it, pass it on to any of your colleagues here, there and everywhere. We'd like to have lots and lots of people all having looking at it at the same time and having a listen and giving us feedback on Twitter. That would be absolutely fantastic. Steve, can you just move us on to the next slide, if that's okay? And then the last thing I wanted to mention is a series of webinars, which I'm doing with my friend and colleague, Esmeralda Salgado. We have done 6. So we're doing 6 webinars. We've done 2 already in the series. So you can watch the recordings of those. And also you can attend the other ones live. We've got one coming up this week on writing. And then we have one on speaking following that. And then one on exam preparation. And then a final one on gamification. So we're actually doing a deal. If you want to sign up for all 6, you can actually get a special deal. But if you look at that link or go to Esmeralda's blog, you'll be able to find out all about it, or just ask me on Twitter, etc. So without further ado, those are the plugs. I'd like to hand over to the amazing Steve Eden. This is the biggest webinar I've ever personally organized, so I'm incredibly excited to be here. And thank you ever so much, Steve, for agreeing to do this. It's amazing. So any questions from anyone in the chat, I'd love to see them. And over to you, Steve. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into your fantastic new career.
Thanks very much, Joe. Hi, everyone. Like Joe said, I'm Steve. You may have come across me before in my previous career working for Arsenal Football Club. The Arsenal Double Club project used football and Arsenal as a way to engage young people to learn another language in school. That project ran from 2006 thereabouts with some amazing cultural partners like the Goethe Institute, UK German Connection, the French Institute, the Spanish Embassy. But that project was sadly closed all of a sudden by Arsenal, sort of start of 2021 through the pandemic. And that led to my redundancy from the club, which was unexpected. But, once I'd left and the program had been shut down by Arsenal, I just thought to myself, well, there's still a need really to inspire young people to learn a language and engage with the subject and football will never not be a good way of doing that, in my view. So, like I said, Joe's asked me to give a little bit about myself. I'm going to do that because I think it's important to understand where I've come from, rather than just diving straight into what I'm doing now. So I grew up in Bromley, South London, going to Langley Park School for Boys. I was absolutely not an enthusiastic learner of languages. We did German and French in Key Stage 3, so year 7 to 9. It was compulsory to do a language GCSE, and I chose German. To cut a very long story short, I then did German at A level and then went on to university to do German there as well. I also picked up Spanish as a beginner. So while German's my strongest language that I've learned through my education, I did pick up beginner Spanish at university as well. So in essence, that gives me a very good level of German, an okay level of Spanish, and obviously I still had my Key Stage 3 French from my time at Langley Park Boys. Like I said, I joined Arsenal not long after graduating. I was there for 11 years in total, until my redundancy. And then when I was made redundant, I began this company, Mingalaba. Mingalaba is, first of all, it's a Burmese word. That's a nod to my family heritage on my dad's side. I just wanted a name for the company that was personal and meant something, and it's a conversation starter as well with the languages audience. So it's just a greeting in Burmese to name the company. Launched it in 2021, not long after I left Arsenal, and carrying on the legacy that was left behind by the Double Club, really doing in a different way. In that I'm not tied to one football club, I'm not tied to one region as I was in North London, and I work with schools all over the country and some organisations all around the world as well, using football as a way to inspire young people to engage with learning a language. I also happen to be an MFL teacher back at Langley Park Boys, so it's kind of come full circle, where I'm teaching there 3 days a week as a teacher, where I'm just Mr. Eden, not anything special, and the other 2 days a week I'm doing Mingalaba stuff, which I'm going to present to you today. So that's me, where I've come from, and where I'm up to now. And the reason I wanted to give you that deeper background is because I use my experiences and the thoughts and emotions that I had as a year 9 pupil back in the day, being made to do language at GCSE when it wasn't my favorite subject. I didn't have any kind of aspiration to pursue languages into the future. I certainly didn't imagine that I'd end up living or working abroad at any point. But as I'm sure everyone listening knows, you just don't know what life's going to throw at you, and then the use that languages can have for you. So I think that's an important selling point in terms of my credibility with the young people when I'm working with them, that I've been in exactly their position, or many of them, maybe being made to do languages or not sure whether to continue it, or actually knowing full well that I don't want to continue with learning a language. And if I've got an option at GCSE to do it or not do it, chances are, and all the statistics will show you, that many are choosing not to do languages. So that's where I'm coming from now in my provision, to try and get them to think differently and think about all the benefits. And football's just the disguise, if you like, and I'll explain how that all works as we go through. So just a little bit about Mingalaba and what I offer. I guess the main thing that I'd want everyone to take from this is that my motivational talk, or an assembly, if you like, in a school setting on languages, the assembly is by far the most popular and I think most impactful service I provide to schools. It lasts anything from 45 to 60 minutes. So it's a proper talk, not just a 20-minute, start of the day assembly. And in that assembly, I'll talk about my journey from being in year 9 and being made to do languages, and all my demotivating thoughts and everything that goes with that, right up to my journey to becoming, a full-time employee in the world of football at Arsenal for 11 years, and all the cool things that came with that. And sure, there's a lot of glamour in there working for a Premier League club, and obviously I had the chance to meet and work with lots of players and things like that, which always grabs the kids' attention. So I'll go into more detail on the assembly in a moment, but that's the main kind of thing that schools are booking me all over the country, really, to come in, do a proper talk on languages and my journey. Once I've talked about my journey, the second half of the assembly actually takes them behind the scenes of a professional football club and gives them an insight to the kind of jobs that they might find in the future if they've got language skills. And these are the sorts of jobs that I wish I knew about when I was their age. It may be the same for you or in your schools where you are now, where often pupils have this perception or misconception that with languages, you can only really be a teacher or a translator, when we all know that's not the case. And what I try and do in my talks is show them really concrete, clear, and engaging examples of realistic, achievable careers that they could all do, whether they're a football fan or not, in the world of professional football and professional sport, and where languages would be really useful to them. And that I found that really does. So you can see the penny drop in a lot of their faces when they're listening to you. And quite often I'll have nice comments afterwards from the pupils and the teachers and everything. So that the assemblies are really, really popular. I also deliver sessions in the classroom. And again, I'll show you some samples of some of the classroom sessions and workshops that I deliver. Again, all packaged in a very football way, but hopefully you'll see, especially as teachers, the value it has on the languages side. And some schools also ask me to deliver a practical football session, which is always a lot of fun, creates a real buzz in the school. Think of that as like a fun PE lesson with the target language drip fed in at the right moments. I'd say that the MFL content in terms of taught content is mostly prevalent in the classroom session there. The football, if you're wanting a really large target language experience, I wouldn't go for the football session. That's more the fun buzz with a bit of target language. But certainly the kids love it, and teachers like to get involved as well. I run lots of competitions, normally when there's a big event like the World Cup, the Euros, the Women's Euros, and so on. I create resources from time to time. I guess that's the biggest difference between this and Double Club, where Double Club was very much about the resources and things like that, whereas I've flipped this on its head, where I'm all about getting out across the country into schools, working with young people directly, and the resources are kind of like an extra thing that I do as and when. I'm still working with those fantastic cultural partners I mentioned, as well as the British Council, where we've just started actually a project around coach education, so giving young people the skills, entry-level skills to becoming a football coach, and how they can use their language skills to supplement that. And at the moment, I've reached over 50 schools across the UK and counting. I'll show you a map of what that looks like later and the kind of schools that I've been going into. But 50 schools, I've been doing this for about a year and a half, coming up for 2 years, but obviously juggling with an MFL teaching role at my school. I'm pretty pleased with that. So I'm going to talk in a bit more detail now about the assembly and some of the content that your young people would see. So this is the opening slide of my assembly, and like I said, I'll talk a lot about my experience from being in school, going to GCSE, A-level. This is actually me when I get to university, because quite often the young people in school don't actually know about the year abroad as being part of the university experience. I'll talk all about how I spent my year abroad and basically milking all the football that was around me at the time in Germany and in Spain. For them, I tell them yours will look very different. Mine was football because that's what my interests are, but you can, if you want to travel, go travel. If you want to meet people, go meet people. Whatever it is you're interested in and want to do, you make that year as fulfilling and enjoyable for you based on your interests and passions. I'll talk about joining Arsenal and all the traveling I've done. So this is me on the left-hand side of the screen in Kenya, coaching for Arsenal, and on the right-hand side in Barbados, both incredible experiences. And this is an interesting one to talk about because quite often the young people will think, well, hang on, you did German and Spanish, how come you've ended up in Kenya and Barbados? And there I'll talk about not necessarily needing to speak the language, but instead applying those adaptability and cultural skills from moving abroad and living in another country, and how that made me an ideal candidate to do this kind of work for Arsenal. So that hopefully makes them see additional reasons for continuing with languages other than just the reading, speaking, writing, listening, and so on. But the cultural and adaptability skills that you get from language study. Then I'll talk a lot more about my 10 years at Arsenal, working there. So talk about my job in the community, with double working with schools, delivering French, German, Spanish lessons. I'll show some highlights, such as receiving this award from Prince Michael with the Chartered Institute of Linguists for our work teaching language in the community. Talk about more of the traveling that I did, this time as an employee of the club all over the world. We always have a little bit of fun with this slide because I always like to get to know the sorts of teams that are supported in the room when I'm doing an assembly. And if I've got Arsenal fans like myself, that's always a nice photo to talk about. If I've got fans of other clubs, particularly Tottenham, who perhaps don't get many photos like that, that's always a fun moment in the assembly where we can have a bit of a laugh with each other. It's quite a nice, relaxed, informal feel in the assembly is what I'm going for anyway. And then, of course, I mentioned being at Arsenal, working with lots of players and managers, some of the biggest in the game, where I talk about, what I did with them, how I interacted with them, some of the interviews I got to do. You saw Alex Scott there with Mesut Ozil doing that interview in German. If I don't speak German, that interview doesn't happen. And again, I'll relate that to how that might look for them in the future. I'll say, I'm not expecting you to say, yeah, in case I meet Mesut Ozil, I need to learn German. No, your story will have different names, different faces, different environments, different settings. The point is, you need to have your language skills ready to go on that one opportunity that arises, which otherwise wouldn't be possible. So football and all this stuff is my story. There's can have similar principles, but with different, different settings. This is a really good slide to talk about. It's a personal interest in mine, actually, to promote the women's game and have that inclusiveness to all my content. And while this is Lisa Evans on screen here, she's a Scotland international footballer and plays for West Ham now. But she spent 5 years playing in Germany. So obviously we talk a bit about Lisa's German language skills and how she felt leaving her home country behind and moving to Germany when she'd never learned German before. We talk about all that. But this is also a chance to talk about things like gender equality in football, where it is stereotypically more of a male-dominated sport. And I think that carries a lot of weight when it's coming, especially from a male, about the kind of privilege.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what's happened just now, but I'm presuming that Steve's lost his internet connection, but I'm sure he'll be back very soon. I see a question from Mademoiselle Mulot. I'm already hooked. Would you travel to Inverness to talk to our kids? I'm sure Steve would. I don't know if you've seen on my Twitter, I think a few days ago now, we had a lovely video there from a PE teacher and a language teacher, probably the head of languages from the school in Dalziel, talking about the benefits of Steve being at the school and the assembly that he did, and then the activities that he did with the students. So I'm sure he'd be very happy to do that. I know he's been getting lots and lots of bookings, and based on the number of people coming along tonight as well, I'm sure that he's going to be incredibly booked, on top of being a part-time language teacher as well, and having a wee lad as well who's just popped onto into life as well recently. So that's fantastic. So I'm just wait here at the moment. Please be patient. I'm sure Steve will join us in a second. I'll just be checking my Twitter, see if he's sending me a direct message at all. But the reason that we arrived a bit late is because something similar happened, and he unfortunately left us for about 5 minutes just before we started, maybe a bit longer actually. So I'm hoping he's going to be with us very soon. The other two videos which I posted about on Twitter as part of the Twitter campaign. There's a lovely one from a lady from Cambridgeshire who was again talking about the impact that Steve has had on his students, and then the other gentleman, if I remember correctly, he was from Hertfordshire, I think. It's on my Twitter anyway. Just talking about the benefits of what Steve's doing. So I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I see that we've got another question here in relation to any football initiatives already happening in any schools. I'm teaching EAL and trying a Premier League gossip club. I certainly have seen on Twitter that there have been teachers tweeting about the fact that they've got in contact with the local football club and asked the players who maybe are from other countries to come in and to inspire the students with their stories, which tends to go down really, really well. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, the Arsenal Double Club, which where Steve was working for, as he said, 10 years plus, they were really they were really groundbreaking when they started this off. And I believe there was something similar happening at Newcastle United, but I think that sort of petered out a bit. But yeah, if you get in contact with Steve, I'm sure he will be able to explain, that he can travel here, there, and everywhere. I think it's really taking off what he's doing, which is wonderful. So while we're waiting for Steve, feel free to put something else in the chat, and that'll be fine. I can see that we've got the question about watching it later. Yeah, absolutely. This is actually the first time I've done a StreamYard, which is what we're using right now, but going to YouTube Live. And so once the session has finished, once I end the broadcast, then the recording will be there. I may, well, we'll see how we get on. I'll have a chat with Steve about it. But basically, what I was thinking was I could then leave it as it is, unless there were sort of big mistakes, as it were. Not this is a big mistake. It's just it is what it is. But I could then download it, take out any mistakes, and then put it up again. But so to answer your question, the link that you're watching right now will still be there for you to watch the replay. And if there are any issues, then it will certainly will record there, and I can download the file, and I can then put it onto my my main site on YouTube. So while you're here, let me just I'll copy those questions across in a second. Hopefully Steve will be joining us soon. I'll just double check if he sent me a message, which he hasn't. So I think it's maybe he's restarting the router. I'm not sure exactly. But now in relation to prices, if you just contact Steve about that, I think he may have the information on his last slide, but just, yeah, rather than, because we're sort of going for the soft sell, as it were, rather than going for the hard sell. So I would suggest, yeah, get in contact with Steve. As you can see, he's a very, very nice guy. And based on the Facebook posts and the comments on Twitter, people are really genuinely appreciating him coming into their schools and talking with their students. There was a friend of mine, Claire Parker, who is up in sort of Worcestershire. I don't know if Claire's with us live right now, but she was saying how what a wonderful job he did, and the way in which the students really warmed to Steve, and he was able to, really enthuse them and encourage them. And we've also had from the lady that I mentioned before from Cambridgeshire, she was saying that there were definitely some students that had decided to carry on with languages at Key Stage 4. For those people who are not in this part of the woods, the students who are from sort of 14 to 16, she felt that he'd encouraged them to take a language up to exam level. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic to see. So I'll just see if there's any questions that I can answer while we're here. Let's have a look. Yeah, so, well, in relation to Steve's website, it's just Mingalaba, even. I'm sure Northern Ireland is a possibility. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he'd be willing to travel here, there, and everywhere. Absolutely. I'm sure that that won't be an issue. And I'm sure he'll be more than happy to travel around the world, in fact, as well. But let me put this in the chat. So this is his website. Here we are. So that's there. And then let's see if there's any other questions I can can answer, sorry. Okay, so Anais, for example, yeah, just contact Steve and he'll get back to you. I'm sure he'd love to come to Dumfries and Galloway. That's all fine. So I can see if Suzanne is saying in Scotland, our National Centre for Languages runs a competition for S1 to S3. So that will be 12-year-olds to 14-year-olds, I think I'm right in saying, about football and the French-speaking world. Le foot et la francophonie. That sounds brilliant, Suzanne. Fantastic stuff. That all sounds great. Let's see if there's any other questions. No, not so far. So I'm hoping Steve's going to join us. Let's see if he's sent me a message. No, not yet. I know what it's like in this situation. He's probably having kittens at the moment, but never mind. There you go. So Claire Brown is saying in the chat, if you go on the website, you can ask for a quote. So I suppose it depends. I don't exactly know. I don't know, Steve's business, as it were, but it sounds like it will depend on the size of the school, the number of people, and what is being asked of him. I know that he's doing a lot of assemblies, but I know that some people have him in for like the whole day, so he'll do some activities as well. If you've already worked with Steve, feel free to write some comments in the chat to help out other people. That would be really helpful, I think. And there we are. Where are you, Steve, is the question. Oh, dear. Interesting. Particularly as my first StreamYard situation. But, on the one hand, it's amazing we've got 200 people live. But unfortunately, Steve's got an internet connection issue. But I'm sure he'll be joining us very soon. So, yeah, if there is anybody here who has seen Steve in action, then feel free to write in the chat. That'll be really, really brilliant. And then we can then go from there. So Kate's saying about why did the double club finish? I don't know, to be honest. I just know that I don't think Steve had a lot of notice, as it were. I think they just basically decided that that they didn't want to fund it anymore. I think it was very successful. My understanding was, and I saw Steve at a number of language shows talking about the double club and all the things that he had been involved in. And I know that he would sort of, because of the way the funding worked, he was able to go to a few like local councils in London. But now that he's freelance doing lots of the similar sorts of idea, he can go here, there, and everywhere. So because of the universal love for football, it means for boys and for girls, it means that what a great way of being able to encourage young people to take up a language when the football, as it were, can be sort of like the hook. And yeah, it's just fantastic. So there we are. This is another classic situation when I should have taken Steve's telephone number, but unfortunately I didn't do that because I just presumed it would all be fine. But there we are, live and learn. But I'm sure he'll be back soon, and we'll just bide our time. We'll see how we get on. But if there really is a problem, then we might have to just reschedule, which would be just one of those things, I suppose. But if that's the case, that's the case. So let's just wait and see. Well, this is a first. I've never had to sort of ad lib. It reminds me of people like Des Lynam back in the 90s or 80s, 90s probably, when he was presenting about Wimbledon, and they had really bad rain over. There was one particular fortnight when they had so much rain that they were regularly, cancelling lots of the matches, and there was one day when they had 8 hours of broadcasting about the tennis matches, but none of them were running. So he had to sort of ad lib, as it were, for 8 hours, which I know is not quite the same as the situation we've got here, but reminds me of that. So yeah, any other comments? Yes, thanks, Nas, for I agree. Some positive feedback about Steve on social media, and I've contacted him to get a quote. I was hoping to know more about the content of his services. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what this presentation is all about. So if we can't do it this evening, then obviously we'll have to just reschedule. But hopefully he will be. Hopefully he will be joining us soon. If not, then we, myself and Steve, can work out a date to reschedule, and then we can then put it out on the socials, as it were, and then go from there. When we had sort of 5 minutes to go, I was a little bit concerned that he sort of disappeared and then didn't come back until 5 minutes after we'd started, I think. And I was thinking maybe the same thing's going to happen when we're actually live. But it seemed to be all running fine. But obviously, I don't know his setup. I don't know if he's got it on a meter or what have you. But I'm sure he's trying really hard. So let's give him a few more minutes. And see if he can join us. I mean, it'd be lovely to know in the chat how, for example, you're using football or how you've used football for teaching languages. I know, for example, when I was doing the MFL Twitterati podcast, which is still available at mfltwitteratipodcast.com back in 2019, we actually had a whole episode. Out of the 10 episodes that we did, we had a whole episode all about football and how football could be used in languages. So what was really cool about it was I went through Twitter and did search for like MFL Twitterati as a hashtag, plus words like football, etc., and was able to find a number of people who had tweeted about football, and then I direct messaged them and saying, I don't suppose you could record some audio describing what you've been tweeting about. So I remember there was one teacher from the northeast near Newcastle who had taken his students to the Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid to see the Real Madrid Bernabeu Stadium, which obviously is incredibly famous. And he was able to take them into the they had like old programs there, so they were able to see the old programs. They were obviously able to see the stadium, and yeah, it was really, really inspiring, I think. And there were, I mean, it was a few years ago now, but there were lots of other nice nice bits of audio. I remember Sasha Stolons as well, who is a university lecturer, who at the time was at Lancaster, I think, and they were doing this sort of like football cup between different universities, with all the instructions in particular language, which I think was German, if I remember correctly, or maybe there were different languages for different games, but that was also really nice, and they had a cup and everything to win. So yeah, that's great. So let's have a look in the chat while we're here. I just read out just read out some of the comments. So, for example, so later this month, Steve will be in Scotland for the Goethe Institute in Glasgow. He'll be running a table football competition at our school. It will be table football with German language training. That sounds amazing, fantastic. And then Melanie saying, "I've used football for the PE department to celebrate the European Day of Languages." Could you go into a bit more detail, Melanie, on how you did that? That would be really interesting to know. And then again, Mademoiselle Mulot. A few years ago, I had 2 French players from the Inverness Cayley Thistle Club to come to the school every week and do some conversation with our seniors. I bet they love that. That would be great to hear a bit more feedback. That sounds wonderful. And then May Walton, I did a lesson looking at Kylian Mbappe's career in French numbers using the Un jour en question videos, which the kids really got into. That's amazing. I remember there's I'm trying to remember her name now. There's a really creative language teacher, again on the podcast, who had used the footballers from the French team to help with phonics. So the idea was she had made this lovely display. I'm trying to remember her name now. It'll come to me, but yes, she had like a display of different football shirts, as in the back, with the names of the players, and then the phonic sound underneath, as it were. And I thought that was an absolutely, genius idea, in the sense that it would be motivating to the children, and they'd be able to remember the phonics because of the names of the French team, which had that particular sound in their name, which I just thought was a really, really fantastic, fantastic idea. Any other uses of football in your language lessons? Be lovely to know. All I need is just a couple of ideas, and then I can keep talking. I'm sure I can keep talking. I could probably find the MFL Twitterati podcast episode I'm talking about. But if you just go to mfltwitteratipodcast.com, and then it's episode, it might be episode 6. I can't remember exactly. So let's have a. Oh yeah, okay. So we've got Marie is using the register routine, including the kids having to give me the name of a qualifying country in the FIFA World Cup. That's a great idea. I bet they love that. That's great. Excellent. So did you give them like a list of all the names of the country, and then they had to do some sort of sweepstake, or how did you divide them up into who had which country? Or did it not matter? Could it be any qualifying country? That'd be interesting to know. This is great. Come on, Steve, where are you? Let me just, I've got a quick notification. That's it. No, that's not Steve. Never mind. Any other fun facts about football and languages? So yeah, Mademoiselle Mulot, it's MF. Let me put it in the chat. It's mfltwitteratipodcast.com. So it's www.mfltwitteratipodcast.com. There we are. So it's still live. I'm still paying for hosting, even though I've not posted anything on there for about 3 years. But my master plan at some point is maybe to resurrect it. But we're all a bit busy at the moment, as per normal. But yeah, that's my plan. And also, it's just a nice thing to have as well, anyway, so people can have a listen to it. And that's why we particularly tried to make sure that the content was evergreen, so that it wasn't sort of time dependent, as it were. Let's have a quick look. So Melanie has said, I've also used Mbappe for a spelling rule that I know as a native French speaker that is also used by French primary teacher back in France. Excellent. Could you maybe, do you mean that you have like sort of like a saying that you have, including Mbappe? Is that what you mean? Or could you elaborate, Melanie, on how you use his name? That'd be really interesting. And Melanie's also said, I've created a quiz to ask pupils and PE teachers to guess the number of. I think we got Steve back. Hey, Steve, you're back. Awesome.
I've just finished my presentation. How long was I going for without an audience?
For that's hilarious. About 20 minutes. I've been paddling quickly for about 20 minutes, but it's fine. You got to the Alex Scott bit, I think.
Oh, wow. That is quite
around
a
that
long
time. Did you not realize that you were offline?
No, nothing came up on my screen because I can just see the PowerPoint in front of me. This is absolutely what you'd expect from modern technology.
Never mind. Well, do you want to bring up your presentation again?
Start again? Yeah, let's start again.
And we'll just carry on from. I think it was Alex Scott. Is that right, everyone? Give me a pointer. I think it was around that sort of area, Alex Scott, or maybe it was the Arsene Wenger bit. I think that's when you left us. But it's fine. I've been waxing lyrical. I've been talking about lots of different things to do with languages and football, and a few other things as well. And
I'm very impressed with your ad-libbing, Joe. If you can keep that going for 20 minutes.
Well, I was bringing in Desmond Lynam. I was talking about the day at Wimbledon I think it was the 90s, when they had really bad rain for the 2 weeks. And there was one day when he had to ad-lib for 8 hours because all the games were rained off. So I likened myself to Des Lynam.
Why not?
So there we are. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking now. Once you've got your presentation up, there we are. I will click add to stream. And I think we're around this sort of area. So if you want to kick us up from there, I will mute my video and audio, and then probably have a quick drink of water, I think. But thanks, Steve. It's great. I can't say how much I'm enjoying seeing you right now. It's awesome. Okay.
Okay, here we go. So welcome back, everyone. I had no idea, because I've obviously only got my PowerPoint in front of me. No awareness that I've been doing my whole presentation with no audience, but such is the world with modern technology. Now, here on screen, you can see I'm interviewing Alex Scott, and there's many other players that I'll talk to the kids about, where I've met them and interviewed them about their language skills. And it's quite, it's a little bit name droppy, but the kids love hearing about it. And this one in particular that you can see here, this is Lisa Evans. She is a Scotland international player who spent 5 years playing in Germany. And this opens up two really nice discussions. First of all, about how Lisa felt about leaving her friends and family behind in Scotland to go move to Germany to get her dream job, even though she didn't speak a word of German, and she immersed herself in the culture and so on. That's one really nice story. But I feel that I have a responsibility as a male who's worked in football to be an ally and fight the gender equality flag. It's a personal interest of mine to do this. And I think this is a really powerful story about just male privilege, really, and how much easier it is for young boys and men to find their way in football, even socially, as was not so much the case for Lisa growing up. So that's always something that I like to include in my assemblies, just as an extra to the language content. And obviously, the kids love seeing me speaking to Aubameyang as well. He's a very famous, very popular player. There's always a good buzz when I talk about the sort of players that I've had the chance to work with through my languages. Like I said at the start, once I've talked about my journey and some of the stuff I did at Arsenal or highlights, I'll then start talking about some of the careers that are out there in the world of football. So there are so many, I won't get through them all, but player liaison is a good example. This is a real job advert that I found at Manchester United for a player liaison officer. And hopefully your eyes are drawn to the bit there in the advert where it says fluency in French and Spanish is a must. So I'll talk to the kids about what a player liaison job consists of. And essentially, it's taking care of all the stuff off the pitch that a player would have to worry about, taking that off their hands and taking care of that so that they can focus on the training, performing and the matches and things like that that elite athletes need to do. So obviously working that closely with the players requires a good level of language skills, especially at a club like Manchester United, many top clubs where they have players from all over the world. We'll talk about the different departments that you'll find within the business side of a football club. I won't get through all of these, but for example, the media team will have colleagues who run the website. And what perhaps the kids don't realize is that most, if not all, the top clubs have websites in other languages to engage their fan bases around the world. So there'll be people who are responsible for creating and managing content in Spanish or French, Arabic, Mandarin for their website to engage their global fan base. Same for social media accounts, be it TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Clubs will have all these platforms and often in multiple languages as well. When they conduct player interviews, not just when the player signs, but throughout their time at the football club, the clubs are always producing content with their players. And if the players come from overseas and they haven't been in the UK for very long, quite often the club will need to facilitate the interview in the player's language and create subtitles for the English-speaking audience. So these are all really typical jobs in the media team of a football club where languages aren't a nice to have, they're an absolute must. I quite like hearing about the travel managers that what they do at football clubs. So, for example, you might be working for Manchester City, and if they're playing away in Newcastle or down in London or in Southampton, someone at the club in the travel team would need to organise all the logistics, the hotels, the transport to get the teams to those different locations. If they're playing in Europe as well, then that's an extra dimension to the job of a travel manager. And this is where the languages quite often come in, because quite often, if Manchester City have a match in the Champions League, for example, against Real Madrid, then it's quite possible that the Manchester United travel manager will be in contact with the Real Madrid travel manager, so their counterpart, because they're going to be organising trips to each other's city and advising on visas and security and things like that. So there's already an opportunity to use language skills. They also need to conduct a risk assessment as the travel manager, fly out to Madrid before the match, long before the match, make sure the hotel is up to standard. Where's the hotel in relation to the airport, the stadium, create an itinerary, and so on. And I think the young people quite enjoy that sort of behind the scenes, behind the curtain insight into how much work actually goes into making professional football happen on our TV screens behind the scenes. And the travel manager's got a lot of opportunity to use language skills. We can talk about sponsorship. So all these companies, they might get a job at these companies in the future. All of them are involved in sponsorship in some way. Adidas being a really good example. They're a German company, head office in Germany, but with offices all around the world. And Adidas are the kit sponsor for Arsenal, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, the Spanish national team. So there'll be people at Adidas whose job it is to work with those football clubs and those national associations, and sometimes individual players as well, who might have a sponsorship deal with Adidas or any of these companies. So you can still have a really fun, fulfilling job in the world of football without being tied to one football club. I'll talk often about some of the media personalities that are out there who speak languages. Kate Abdo, for example, grew up in Manchester and is very multilingual. All these people are high-profile broadcasters or journalists who speak other languages, and I'll just tell their stories in the assemblies. So here's a little bit of feedback and testimonials from teachers and students about the assembly. I'll just leave that on screen for a bit, but hopefully you're getting from the vibe that it's a very fun, very informal atmosphere in those assemblies. I don't mind being heckled. It creates a nice atmosphere in there where the kids are having fun, but they're being engaged and they're being encouraged to start imagining what might be possible for them as a result of the assembly, whether that's from the bit about my journey and what their journeys might look like, or whether it's the career stuff where they're starting to imagine, actually, I can see myself being a travel manager or working in sponsorship or whatever. And you may have seen in the event information on the event page that it's been known for pupils to queue up for pictures and ask extra questions after assembly. These are just the photographic evidence that I have of it. It happens more often than just these two photos. These are in two different schools, one in sort of Cambridgeshire way, and the other one, that one's in Edinburgh on the right-hand side, where I'll get tons of questions during the assembly, and more often than not, afterwards, a number of kids will rush to the front, ask me more questions, and yeah, sometimes it's who do you prefer out of Messi and Ronaldo, and I'll answer all those questions because I think that's an important part in engaging them and football being that hook to get their attention. But often I'll also get, how can I go about getting a job at a football club? What language is the best to learn? It might be about the year abroad. They got questions about that. So this happens quite a lot after assemblies where they're asking for extra time to ask questions and in some cases take photos, which I don't think I'll ever get used to. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the classroom sessions that I offer. I am quite a fan of the Gianfranco Conti methodology. We use his stuff a lot in my school that I teach in, so I quite often provide a sentence builder for the content that I'm going to teach in a particular workshop through Mingalaba. So this sentence builder is for Spanish. I'd say this one is more upper key stage 2, lower key stage 3. And those of you familiar with Conti, we do a few of the familiar warm-up games to get familiar with the language that they're going to be using from the sentence builder. These sorts of games are brilliant for encouraging speaking and interaction, all in the build-up to a final task where, in this case, they need to build their own five-a-side team made up of animals. So as you can see in the example there, for the non-Spanish speakers, I've chosen my goalkeeper is a cat because he can jump well, although they're a little bit small. And really what we're trying to get them to do here is use connectives, give opinions, be creative and adventurous with your writing. To them, they're building a five-a-side team made up of animals, and it's fun and it's funny, and they like to debate whether a cat or an octopus would make a better goalkeeper. Let them have those discussions, as long as they are also producing sentences like the one you can see on screen, where they're adding more detail to their sentence and adding more creativity. So there's one example. Again, another sentence builder to kick off a different workshop. This one I would say is for Key Stage 3, maybe Key Stage 4, but definitely Key Stage 3, where they are preparing to write their own match report as a journalist in the target language. Now, if you'd said to the students at the start of the workshop that by the end you're going to write a match report, a newspaper article in the language, I think some of them might find that quite intimidating or think it's unrealistic. But actually, following the same kind of methodology and the same concepts, it's a very fun, relaxed environment. Once they've familiarized themselves with the sentence builder, this next task starts getting them to apply that language. So this is a real match that took place a few years ago between Arsenal and Chelsea in the Women's Super League. And the question is just which player scored 2 goals, with the answer Beth Mead scored 2 goals, where hopefully you can see that in the diagram. In the 49th and 60th minute, Beth Mead did indeed score 2 goals. But they're really starting to put into sentences now what happened during the match. again, all leading up to that match report at the end. Now, the students don't need to know a thing about football to do this. If they do, brilliant, they can write about whatever match they like. But even if they don't, it can be a made-up match, it can be a school match, it really, really doesn't matter. What's important is that they start to apply the language from the sentence builder. They're writing in good, creative sentences, and hopefully the teachers among you recognize this is actually a really good way to get them to practice the past tense. To them, they're writing about football. They're writing about their favorite players. They're teasing their friends because they're writing about a match where their team lost. It's a real fun atmosphere, but actually all the learning that we try and do week in, week out around the past tense and descriptive writing and being ambitious is going into these sorts of workshops. Just they're not really noticing it. I guess perhaps the most advanced version of the workshops I offer would be something like this, where this is a French example where they're given a business scenario. In this case, they are a travel manager at a football club in Paris, and they need to organise a pre-season match with a team from the UK. So maybe they've had the assembly already and they've heard all about the travel manager. Now they've got the chance to act out what it might be like as a travel manager working with a club overseas. They get given a target. They get given some figures to deal with as part of the negotiation. And basically, they just need to get the best possible deal for their club, organise the flights and accommodation and so on, and go up against their peers in their classroom who will be representing other clubs who are all trying to achieve the same thing. So it's a really fun, dynamic workshop. They always get really into it, trying to undercut each other and make as much money for their club as possible. The one, I'll be candid, the one criticism I'll have of my own workshop here is that because they get so into it and they're so competitive, sometimes they forget that they need to use the target language here and they dip into English because they're so determined to get one over their rival clubs in the classroom. But the teachers don't seem to mind that. They love the fact that they're so engaged, and actually in the real world they might find that business meetings do sometimes go into English, such as the nature of international business. So there is enough target language in there for them to use, and the high achievers will always try and apply the target language they've learned in the workshop to use in the negotiation. But it is, like I said, a very fun, interactive, lots of speaking, negotiation skills as well, which is important in that kind of workshop. For Key Stage 4, I would say you might get, high level Key Stage 3 doing this, but it tends to be Key Stage 4 that I do this with. Every now and then, the school might ask me not to do a workshop like I've just shown you, but rather consolidate a chapter that they've done recently in class. So this is an example of an activity I created for a school that asked me to consolidate year 8 or year 9, I can't remember, being fit and healthy. So this is just an adapted version of Battleships. So they're trying to score a goal here. They might say, fit zu bleiben muss ich 2 Stunden trainieren. We'll click on that one. Great, there's a goal there, 1-0 to me. So I can deliver this sort of thing as well, but to be honest, I tend to do more, or the schools ask more for the workshops that I've shown you previously. But this is also an option to consolidate stuff you've done already in class. A few tweets and posts and comments about the classroom session. I'd always say the classroom session is where the most MFL content is there out of everything I offer. Obviously, the assembly is very, very different because I'm there talking about why we should all learn languages, where the classroom session does look more like a conventional lesson in terms of teaching and learning and things like that, but it's all packaged in a way that doesn't make it feel that way. And everything you've seen, so the Animal Dream Team, the match report, the business scenario, those are all available in French, German, and Spanish. I'll finish with the practical football session. This, as I said at the start, is like a fun extra, creates a buzz in the school, usually there to get the kids on side, reward them for doing well in the classroom or something like that. And it's essentially a PE lesson, focusing on football and games and teamwork and things like that, with target language dropped in where possible. Obviously, as a Germanist myself, if I've got a German group, as I have in the bottom left-hand corner there, that's this lovely school up in Worcestershire, where I was working with year 10. That session was German year 10, and I did that pretty much all in German. So it was all delivered in German, whereas bottom right, that was a French group for year 9 in Hertfordshire. like I said, I did French until year 9 when I was a kid, so I don't really have the level to do the whole thing in French. But here we are organising the teams in French, which I can do. And during the match, I'll be calling commands and praise and saying how long's left in French. And you'll be amazed how much the kids absorb. They think they're just playing football, but they're actually absorbing a lot of stuff from the touchline through context and their surroundings and so on. So football's always a fun extra. The kids love it. They, like I said, they think they're having a kick around when actually they're absorbing more than they realize. But in terms of target language input, if you really want to challenge your students and push them to be ambitious with their language, the classroom session would be recommended. If you're just looking for something fun for them to enjoy and a different context for languages, and you want to create that buzz in a school, then the practical sessions are good for that as well. Here's a map of all the schools I've visited and a few in green that I'm soon to be visiting. And hopefully from the map, you can see from the number of state schools I've visited that this is absolutely achievable. It's not just a service for the budgets for independent schools. If you're hoping for a figure of how much it is to bring me into a school, it's very difficult for me to give that to you here, just because it does depend on a number of things. First of all, whether you want just one assembly and that's it, or if you want a whole day's full of delivery with assemblies, workshops, football and what have you, or anything in between. So it's not like one set menu I can give you exactly, because it also does depend on travel. So I'm based in London, and naturally if I need to travel up to the northeast or the northwest or to Scotland or anywhere that's not London, basically, that will obviously bring travel and accommodation costs as well. So it can add up. But hopefully, as you'll see from the form at the bottom of the screen there on the Mingalaba website, I will send you a full quote with all your options and creative ways that you can make this affordable. That might mean partnering up with another local school in your area, therefore splitting those travel costs in half, and you're just then paying that and then whatever you want me to deliver. I'm also very transparent about where I'm going to be at certain times. So recently I've had a flurry of quotes come in, some from the Northeast, and it so happens that I'm already booked in the Northeast by another school. So I've said to this new school, actually, I'm going to be in the Northeast on this date. Here's a chance for you both to half your travel costs. So I'll always work with you to make it affordable. I don't really ask teachers how they go about paying for it, but I do know that some just use the MFL budget. Some involve their PE colleagues and use some PE budget, especially if the football sessions are being done. That will absolutely involve the PE department, because you need to collaborate with renting out the space and so on. And actually, to be fair, the assembly would also be of interest to the PE department, because a lot of those careers that I speak about form part of the GCSE Sports Studies curriculum. So I have known schools to share the cost between MFL and PE budgets. Some schools use their careers budget if you have one. And like I said, there's always ways to make it feasible, make it accessible. Hopefully that map was a good indicator of that. So Joe, hopefully everyone's still there, and I've not been doing this to myself again, but I'm going to hand back to you in case there have been any questions to come in. On the screen, you've got my website, my Twitter handle. And like I said, if you are interested in having me and would like a quote with some options of when I can visit, then please do fill in that form at mingalaba.co.uk/book a visit. You can also go to the Mingalaba website and just go to the schools drop-down menu, and the book a visit option will be there. Just fill that form in, that will come straight to me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can with a quote and all the possible options. Back to you, Joe.
Fantastic, Steve. Lovely segue there. Brilliant. I'm really impressed by everything that you've been doing with this new venture. I think it's testament to you about the number of people that have come along tonight, the number of schools you've already visited, and I'm sure off the back of this there'll be many more. In fact, there aren't really any questions, but there are a number of people asking whether you'll be willing to go to so far we've got Inverness, we have Dumfries and Galloway, and we have Northern Ireland as well. So as you said, as everyone has heard as well, just get in contact with Steve, and he'll sort out a quote based on your needs, and then I'm sure everyone will be very happy. That's amazing. Are there any other questions in the chat that people want to ask right now? That would be great. This is your perfect opportunity to put them straight to Steve. We did have quite a lot of sharing when you weren't with us for 1 or 2 minutes. We shared a few ideas around how we can use football in languages, for example, for teaching phonics and spelling rules and various other ways which we can all check out and remind ourselves in the chat. I think the chat stays with the YouTube live. I will check with that if that's a setting which I can flick to make sure that happens. But thank you again. Thank you so much, Steve. We got there, and I think that you've done a great job in showing us all the things that you do with all those inspiring photos, and hearing your journey, I think, has been absolutely brilliant. So without further ado, I'd just like to remind everyone right at the top of the webinar that I talked about the PPLI podcast, MFL Teachers Talk. Do check it out on the PPLI website as well as on Spotify, and it will be on Apple Podcasts soon. And also, if you go to the mflcraft.blogspot.com website, you can find out about the Giving Student Wings webinar series. And it doesn't matter if we've already done 2 of them. You can get the recordings of those if you want, and then come to the following 4 after that. And watch them live, or just if you can't watch them live, you can get the recordings and you can book for all 6 if you'd like at a discounted rate. So thank you so much, everyone. What a memorable evening it's been. It's been absolutely fantastic. I just think that's hilarious that that you thought you were presenting to everybody and we were like, oh dear, we were all just like paddling and trying to keep going, but we did it. So, yeah, so thank you so much for all the lovely comments in the chat. Once I've had a little lie down, I will go through and read them in detail, but I think I've answered. I think I've put all the questions to Steve, so that's great. So yeah, get in contact with Steve, ask about what he can do for you, and essentially you're happy to travel anywhere. Is that right, Steve? Like not just in the UK, but further afield, presumably.
Yeah, if it's doable for me and the school, then absolutely. I have seen a question pop up there about my waiting list. I am pretty much fully booked now until Easter, which obviously is popular because of options. But I am taking bookings for the summer term, perhaps for schools who have kids who have to do it at GCSE and need to find a way to engage them, especially if you've got kids like I was when I was in 9, where I'm being made to do it. I'm not sure why. That's often a time when schools get me in to get them to look forward a bit more to their GCSE. Whatever your need is. Like I did say that I do this alongside an MFL teaching role Monday to Wednesday. So that means my visits are Thursdays and Fridays for this, because as you know, it's very difficult to get out of school. So Monday to Wednesday is my school where I'm employed to teach there. Thursdays and Fridays are my Mingalaba days where I'm ready to travel wherever will have me.
That's amazing. We have got one last question from Liz, if that's okay. So the question is, can you do a multilingual session, e.g. using German, Spanish and French throughout the visit? I mean, I suppose that would depend on the situation or the activity, I presume. What would you say to that, Steve?
Yeah, so the general rule of thumb is for any classroom or football session, treat it like you would any other MFL class, so maximum of 30-ish, and keep it one language at a time. That way, you can imagine what it'd be like trying to do multiple languages in one lesson with one group. But like I said, once you've contacted me for a quote, I'll give you all the options that you have for making it possible to reach all 3 languages in some way.
Awesome. I think we'll just finish with this quote from Anais, which I absolutely love. This is so inspiring. Thank you so much. See you soon in our school, hopefully. There's a big Arsenal fan in the PE department who would be delighted to meet you, I'm sure, and me being a huge football fan too. There we are. What a lovely way to finish the webinar. Presumably you don't mind working with people who are not Arsenal fans, Steve.
Yeah, if I have to. Of course, no. Even if you don't like football, that's absolutely fine. I'm not there to brainwash anyone. Hopefully it's clear what impact having someone like me can have in the school. I'm not here to convert everyone to Arsenal fans.
No, and I think you've demonstrated that in spades this evening with your passion and your inspiration. So thanks so much to Steve, yourself. Thanks ever so much for everyone coming along. I'm going to hit end broadcast to finish a very, very memorable first ever StreamYard for me. Never forget this one, but it's been a lot of fun. And thank you so much, everyone, for bearing with us. it's been really, really, really interesting. So the recording will be available, I think, probably straight away after I finish the broadcast via the link. If I need to do any editing or what have you, then that'll be obvious. But I think that I think we'll probably just leave it as it is, I would say. But I'll have a chat with Steve about that afterwards and see what we're going to do. But yeah, I'm going to hit end broadcast now. But again, thank you so much, all of you, for coming along. Feel free to write comments on the Facebook pages where I posted this, and also on Twitter. It would be lovely for Steve to see your feedback. And if and when Steve comes into your school, please share feedback as well. I'm sure that he would find that really useful, and I'm sure to inspire other people to contact him about his services as well. That'd be awesome. Okay, take care, everybody. Take care, Steve. And I'm going to click end broadcast right now. Bye-bye.